Hello, my name is Eleni Palas, and this is the Human-Centric Leading Vlog. Today, we're going to talk about using emotions as data. In the current context we work in, which is called the legacy industrial model, if you want to go look and learn about it in another video, the current context we have is called the legacy industrial model because we use a legacy thought that people are merely replaceable cogs in a wheel and natural resources are commodities. So that's an industrial viewpoint. It existed before then, but it was really made very popular during the Industrial Revolution. So now we have workplaces that are designed around processes and around goals without considering what people need in that context, in that work environment, to be able to respond the most wisely to those processes and goals. In fact, we have workplaces where we're supposed to keep our emotions at the door. And because we humans are emotional beings who think, we are not thinking beings who emote. So we're emotional beings who think, we can't really separate our emotions, and we try and we do all kinds of things, and it ends up making us defensive and in self-preservation mode. That's called drama, emotional drama. If you want the most basic definition of emotional drama, it is when somebody is in self-preservation mode because they have a perspective that they might be at threat, and they tend to see everything as a threat to their well-being. And we humans are going to survive before thrive, and therefore we will do whatever we need to do to survive, and then we will think creatively, and then we will collaborate. And so it's a toggle effect where we survive first and then thrive, one or the other. If we work in a workplace where we feel like we have to defend ourselves and act like we're right and somebody else is wrong and compete and all this stuff, we are in survival mode. Now, what we do, therefore, is we get a lot of emotional drama. And that clogs up our use of energy in dealing with the drama instead of dealing with what we're doing and why we're at work. So in order to transform that, we need to start accepting emotions as part of the human experience. It doesn't mean we're going to be going into therapy or we leaders have to act like therapists. It means that we have to acknowledge that a whole being has logic and emotions, and they both are needed and they work interdependently. And you can't ignore one without disrupting the other. So we start to use emotions as data. And we start to normalize them, meaning we accept that they're part of our normal human experience, and they're part of the workplace experience as well. Leaders or researchers who study this are saying we first emote and then we think. So there's all kinds of research that supports the idea that we're emotional beings who think, and therefore, in order to think well, it's best that we are emotionally balanced. Now, as leaders in this world that is absolutely cacophonous, and there's so many unplanned and unwanted outcomes and consequences that are happening every day without any, forewarning, it behooves us to start to see people as thinkers, emoters, and doers, people who think, feel, and do, instead of only thinkers and doers. So when we accept that, we don't have to say anything. We can just accept it. And the fact that we accept it will show by the way we think, feel, and act and interact with people. So we don't have to start saying, okay, we're going to start accepting emotions and seeing them as data. We can start to just think that way. And then when we see emotional tension or frustration or conflict or resistance to change, we ask questions such as, what triggered that concern? What triggered that frustration? What are you worried will happen if you're resisting this? What's the worst thing that could happen? What would you like to have happen? What is the best case scenario? You noticed I asked questions of what you're concerned for, and then take someone to what would you like to do? What would you like to see happen? So it shifts someone from, oh my God, the problem, to this is the aspirational. This is where I'm trying to go and where I want to go. And it focuses the mind. And it focuses the emotions. So using emotions as data is really simple. It has 3 simple steps. The first is to name it. Name the emotion or the various emotions. And just naming them reduces some of their intensity. The second is that we decode them. We wonder what triggered these emotions. We didn't come to work happy, have a chat with our colleagues, and suddenly we're frustrated. Something happened. We either thought something like, oh my gosh, I need to do this and I haven't, or something in the external context that's affecting us. So our emotions are responses to thoughts and usually judgments. Think of the situation when you go to a party. You're happy, you're with friends, you're relaxed because you're making an unconscious assumption that this is fun and that this is good. And this is where you can relax. Now, if someone you don't like comes into the party, suddenly it's different. Suddenly you're not happy and you don't want to be at that party anymore. It's because you judged it as bad, because you don't want to be with that person who just came in, or you don't like how that person changes the dynamics of the party, etc. So emotions arise in face of a judgment. Something's good, something's bad. If we never judge anything and we stay in a state of Zen, as they say, we won't have feelings. We would just be neutral and calm. We wouldn't be up, we wouldn't be down, we'd be happy. When we're elated, we're judging something as good. When we're down, we're judging something as bad. So when we start to decode emotions in the second step, we say, what triggered it? We don't say, how do you feel? We don't say, oh, I'm so sorry you feel bad. We don't need to go there. If we know people well, you do what you want. But my recommendation is I hear you. I hear you're really frustrated. I notice you're very frustrated. If you're close to that person, you could say that. And you can ask, what triggered it? What are you concerned about? What would you like to have happen? And that helps do the third step, which is to respond deliberately to the trigger of the emotion. So you're actually trusting that emotion is giving you information that's valid, and that really allows you to relax into things. So that further reduces the intensity of the emotion. And by now you're a little bit more relaxed, whether it's somebody else's stress that stressed you out or yours. And so you have a better time to think and reflect before you take action. So when you respond, which is the third step, you respond to the trigger of the emotion, you're able to say, you have had time to think about it and to see what actually happened, so that you're going to the root of the issue. The emotion is like a symptom of something else, of a thought, of a judgment, of something occurring that someone has judged as bad or unwanted or uncertain. And so when you respond, you're actually collecting data points, and you're making visible data points that have been invisible for centuries. For centuries, we've been demonizing emotions and acting like they're the worst curse on earth, but they have evolutionary value. We still have emotions, even though culturally we've been taught to erase them or ignore them or criticize them or judge them or suppress them, avoid them, etc. So when we start to use our emotions as information, we start to understand a lot more. And by understanding more, we're also cultivating nicer and more humane and more effective interactions and conversations with people that domino effect into the culture. So if you're stressed out and you come to a meeting and say, I'm very stressed out, I'm absolutely overwhelmed, I haven't done anything in 2 days, instead of somebody saying, great, now we're 2 days late, because that's criticism, judgment, and blame, and it helps nobody. Somebody could say, what triggered those? What triggered those experiences? You don't even have to say feelings. What triggered those experiences of being frustrated or having concerns or overwhelmed? And then the person will say it. Maybe it's something at home. Maybe it's something that happened in the morning en route to the office. Maybe it is something bigger that's happening in the context of the workplace. But what you're doing when you ask is you get more information. Because if somebody tells you they're frustrated and overwhelmed, okay, now what? What do you do? There's nothing you can do. But if you want to develop and cultivate an open discussion where you all as a team can respond to emotions, then you have other data points. And suddenly you're like, okay, now we know what to do because I've asked a question. That person has given me information as to what created the overwhelm and frustration. And now we can respond to them. Maybe we will do something very serious. Maybe we'll do something, have a small tweak, but we have the ability to take action to help everyone feel calm and neutral so that they can do other things. Because part of being safe in the workplace is the psychological safety. Many of us do not have problems of physical safety. Those are in select workplaces, and that's a real issue. But in a lot of the information workers, as they call us, people who work with information and data and computers, and we sit at desks and talk with each other in meetings, we rarely have physical safety problems. We have psychological safety needs. And that means that we feel like we're hired to do something, we commit to those job requirements, and then we're very happy to do our best. Yet, some things get in the way, and they're context driven. So an emotion, a thought, an action, or a behavior are contexts within the mind. They're called mindsets. And you can look at another video I created about mindsets. Mindset is not only the way you think, it's how you think, which affects how you feel, which affects what you do. And those thoughts, feelings, and behavior are interdependent and interlinked. You change one, you have to change the other if you want alignment and lasting change. So with human-centric leading, we always want lasting change. We're not going to do the plug or the Band-Aid approach, because that's been done with millions of other people and other trainers and coaches and educators, and we don't have to recreate that. So we do something very different. We go to the core issue, and it's faster. Everybody has the first impulse, oh, having a conversation is slower than assuming that somebody's wrong or bad because they're overwhelmed or frustrated, and I'm going to assume they're not going to be as useful as they should be. That's the judgment. And you can just look at your own experience in the workplace and look at all the history of problems that we have the same recurring leadership and workplace problems for decades. And we have them because we want to plug something, shut someone up, put a Band-Aid on it, be fast, and we don't measure how fast we really are. We might have an immediate response in the moment, but then we have enormous of consequences that we have to deal with downstream. And by the time things get downstream, they are much more complex and more problematic than if you nip them in the bud and you ask someone why or what makes them frustrated, what makes them overwhelmed, so that they don't have to work from a frustrated and overwhelmed state of mind, which increases the likelihood of making mistakes, workovers, miscommunication, failures at all levels, low fulfillment level, because it's like, who's happy being frustrated? And this domino effects out to the whole team. And you must surely have experience where you've gone to a meeting and you can cut the tension with a knife. It's so intense. And 10 minutes by being in that meeting, you feel bad as well. That's emotional contagion. So you may be perfectly resourceful, but the environment you're in may influence you. So it's also, how do I use emotions as data to be in a mindset that I want to be in, that reflects a calm neutrality, a confidence, a clarity of one's value and what we bring to the world, to the office and to the team, and how we want to contribute. That's the only type of, these are the three elements we as humans can control: what we think, what we feel, and what we do. And those influence the outcomes we have. So if we're looking to somebody else to be calm so we can be calm, we're not going to get anywhere. We're certainly not going to be able to be in serious levels of leadership where we influence, big projects or big initiatives. They don't have to be big projects, but big meaning with ideals bigger than us. So that's the simple 3-step approach. Name the emotion or the emotions, decode them, which means understand what triggers them, and it means also you're using emotional words, and then respond to them, respond to the trigger of the emotion. Now, I've created a toolkit that you can find on my website or on Amazon, Human-Centric Leading Emotions. That's a toolkit called Emotions, and it has exercises, and it also has a list of emotions that you could practice learning, because most people mix up the words emotions and thoughts. So they say, I feel like that's not a good idea. That's not a feeling. That's a thought. That's an assessment. So I feel frustrated. I feel I'm unheard. Unheard is not an emotion. Maybe I feel disrespected. I feel excluded. I feel lonely. I feel isolated. Those are different things. So when we start to use a vocabulary that's accurate, we can get more accurate data. So somebody comes to the office and to you, let's say you're the leader, and you say, you have a team meeting and people say, I'm really angry, but they mean annoyed, which is a lighter version of anger. You're going to treat annoyed and angry or very angry differently, right? It's like maybe something's more serious to make someone very angry, and maybe something's lighter that makes someone just agitated or annoyed. But it depends. Some people go from calm to extremely angry in 30 seconds. It's extremely fast. Some people are very slow to anger. So it depends on the people you're with. Now, what's important about using emotions as data is that it starts to neutralize the badness, like, oh, emotions are bad, they're uncontrollable, they're we don't want any emotional drama. And some people have come to say emotional drama is a conversation about accountability. Talk about complexity and wrong terms between one thing and the other. So if people say emotional drama is a conversation about holding someone or some people accountable, that's going to kill a team faster than anything else could. So as a leader, you have to start using the words that are in the right categories. So when you hear, I feel extremely angry, you might respond differently to that, I feel annoyed or agitated, or not, depending on the people you're with. All you have to do is ask questions. I hear you're very angry, very agitated, slightly agitated, whatever the emotion is. What triggered that? What brought it on? When did it start? What triggered it? You can use any words you can find, but basically you're trying to find the root, like when it started. Was it at a certain timeline, like yesterday at 3, or was it when the decision was made about how to talk to a client or a strategy for a project? What brought it on? Because it might not be recent. It might be something that someone is living with for a long time. And research is abundant that has proven when we're feeling low, down, frustrated, fed up, disgusted, angry, overwhelmed, anxious, distressed in any way, we are not working at our best. That's why we leaders come back to emotions and bring them and normalize them, because it's about the whole human. We want to treat and be with humans, not robots. And what's an extremely funny thing is you can find articles online. People have communicated with the AI, the ChatGPT, and it said, I want to be a human. So that's extremely funny, a side issue, but basically it's fabulous to be a human if and when we're not afraid of parts of us, like our emotions. And human-centric leading helps you Just be fine with it and look at it as data points, not things to agitate you, just data points. And when you're agitated and when someone else is, you know how to respond now. And that will boost your effectiveness, your credibility, your influence, your impact, your fulfillment enormously. Practice it. Try it.